All right, everybody, welcome back. We are jumping into a classic today, folks. A deep dive on Oscar Wilde's The Picture of Dorian Gray.
Ooh, yes, a favorite.
Yeah, and who hasn't thought about, staying young forever, right? I mean, if you could make a deal to have your portrait age instead of you, wouldn't that be tempting?
Well, I think that's the question that Wilde is really grappling with in this novel. I mean, it's such a fascinating and sort of disturbing premise at the same time, right?
Yeah, it's definitely got that Faustian bargain vibe to it, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's the classic deal with the devil. You get what you want, but at what cost, right? And I think, we see this idea echoed throughout history in so many different ways. And literature, of course, is just, it's ripe with these sorts of stories, right? But,
Yeah.
Think about it, even in a contemporary context, you see people like sacrificing everything, their health, their relationships, all for the sake of success, beauty, whatever that sort of, that thing is that they're striving for.
It's like that age-old question. Would you sell your soul for pause?
Fame, fortune, eternal youth.
Exactly. I mean, in Dorian's case, it's that desire to stay young and beautiful forever. And it's like he gets exactly what he wished for, but at a pretty horrifying cost.
And that cost really starts to become clear, I think, with the introduction of Lord Henry. He's like that voice of temptation whispering in Dorian's ear, constantly feeding him these philosophies of hedonism and beauty above all else. He's almost like the influencer of the Victorian age. Right?
Totally. I mean, you can practically see Lord Henry racking up the followers on Instagram, can't you?
Oh, absolutely. With perfectly filtered photos and witty captions, of course. But I think Wilde really captures that power of influence, how easily we can be swayed by ideas, especially when they're presented in a way that's, charismatic and seductive. And I think that's what makes Lord Henry such a compelling character. And also dangerous.
Oh, definitely. Dangerous and manipulative. And it's like he plants these seeds of, well, almost corruption in Dorian's mind, and then just sits back and watches him unravel. And as Dorian falls deeper under Lord Henry's spell, we start to see those consequences, those like darker impulses reflected, not in Dorian himself because he stays young and beautiful, but in that hidden portrait, right?
Exactly. It's like that visual representation of his soul, his conscience. And as Dorian's actions grow more and more, well, wicked, the portrait becomes this like grotesque mirror image reflecting all the ugliness that he keeps hidden from the world.
It's like that classic idea that beauty is only skin deep, right? But in this case, it's like Wilde flips that on his head, and it's the ugliness that's hidden beneath the surface. And it makes you wonder, right? If we all had a portrait like that, reflecting our true selves, what would it look like?
That is a chilling thought, but it's a good one, right? Because I think it forces us to really confront that duality of human nature. I mean, we all want to project a certain image to the world, put our best face forward, so to speak. But, we all have our secrets, our flaws, our moments of weakness, right?
Yeah. And the more Dorian tries to suppress that darker side of himself, the more monstrous the portrait becomes.
And the more he isolates himself. And I think that's one of the really tragic elements of this story, right? Because it's not just about Dorian's own moral decay, but also the way it impacts those around him.
And that brings us to Sybil Vane. I mean, her story is just heartbreaking. She falls so deeply in love with Dorian, sees only the beauty, the charm, and he completely destroys her.
Yes, and I think Sybil's character really highlights the devastating consequences of Dorian's actions. It's easy to get caught up in his world, his pursuit of pleasure. But with Sybil, we see the real human cost, the pain and the destruction that he leaves in his wake. Her death is a real turning point in the novel because it shatters that illusion that Dorian's been living under, that he can just escape the consequences of his choices,
It's a harsh wake-up call, right? And a reminder that our actions have ripple effects. We might not always see them, but they're there. And while he really doesn't hold back in showing us the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of beauty and charm, does he?
No, he doesn't. And I think that's what makes The Picture of Dorian Gray such a powerful and enduring work. It's a story about, about temptation, about the seductive nature of beauty, but also about the importance of moral responsibility and the very real consequences of our choices. I mean, it's a story that stays with you long after you finish reading it, makes you question things and maybe even take a closer look at yourself.
It's a powerful reminder that we all have a choice to make, We can choose to embrace beauty and pleasure, but we also have to acknowledge the responsibility that comes with that. And, that idea that we can't just escape the consequences of our actions, that's something that resonates with, with readers even today, I think, more than 100 years after Wilde wrote this novel.
It really does. I mean, think about it. We're still grappling with these same issues today. The pressure to conform, the obsession with youth and beauty, the allure of quick fixes and easy solutions. It's all there in the novel, just dressed up in Victorian clothing. And that's the beauty of great literature, right? That it can speak to us across time and place and still feel so relevant, so immediate.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder if Dorian had made different choices, if he had faced those consequences head on, would things have turned out differently?
Right.
But then I guess that wouldn't be much of a story, would it?
Well, maybe that's the story we all have to write for ourselves. The choices we make each and every day, they paint our own portrait in a way, one that's not hidden away in an attic, but rather on full display for the world to see.
You've given us a lot to think about today. If you had to choose, would you take that Faustian bargain? Eternal youth, but at a terrible cost. What would you be willing to sacrifice?
It's something to ponder, isn't it? And if you want to delve even deeper into these ideas and explore more of Wilde's brilliant writing, I highly encourage you to check out The Picture of Dorian Gray. You won't be disappointed.
It's a true classic for a reason.
Well, thanks for joining us for another deep dive.
My pleasure.
We'll see you next time, folks.